The WWE Draft is quickly approaching. It'll be here next weekend, and you know what the deal is. But reports are saying that we're going to go back to treating NXT as a third brand, so the rosters are going to be mixed up just a little bit more. And with today's list, seeing as how NXT has been around for almost a decade, can you believe that? We're going to look at the worst NXT call-ups, and this will be a 4-part list. Starting with number 40, Derek Bateman, or EC3. Now, this guy came from TNA after being in the WWE, as he was a part of the NXT game show seasons, came back to NXT, was called up to the main roster, and did nothing. Absolutely nothing was done with him. With a lot of this list, we're going to see a lot of people that were called up and left and were just better somewhere else. And EC3 ended up being a former multiple-time TNA champion, and nothing happened with him on the main roster. Number 39, Emma. Now, for you, those of you that don't know, Emma was a really big part of the original quote-unquote women's revolution down in NXT. She showed she had the skill, the talent, and the wherewithal to become a very capable and really good wrestler in the ring. So it was exciting for her to be called up to the main roster, and she was given first some weird dancing gimmick where she was dancing at the crowd, acting like we didn't know who she was. And then she was paired with Santino. That went nowhere. She was then released, made a big name for herself on the indies, did great work in TNA, came back to the WWE, was given this weird Emelina gimmick where she was like, kind of like how Toni Storm and Ash Elegance are, and they did nothing with that. That gimmick was ended up given to, I think, Lana or Eva Marie, and she was released again, got called back, and was on the main roster for a cup of coffee and was gone. You failed one of the best wrestlers of your women's revolution. Number 38, Adam Rose. Now, Adam Rose should have been bigger. We know what he was about, party guy. You need that kind of gimmick just to get the crowd going. Be nothing more maybe than a top mid-card champion. And don't forget about his Rosebuds, who had multiple world champions in his grouping. But the former Leo Kruger, which I think would have been a better gimmick to go along with the main roster, just didn't have it at all. They failed him. Number 37, Mason Ryan, dubbed the next Batista for very obvious reasons. He was okay in NXT, and then when he got called up to the main roster, he was a part of the New Nexus and then the Core, and that should have been a good jumping off point. But looks can only get you so far. He could not talk on the mic, and he was barely capable in the ring. But you can get away with certain things if you're treated in a certain way, and they ultimately failed Mason Ryan. Number 36, Yoshi Tatsu. Y'all remember him? If you look at him now, he looks so much like Takeshita. It's not even funny. But he had an okay start in NXT, and then he was called up to the main roster. It was actually part of the ECW brand. And you thinking, okay, he's on ECW. That should be a good way to give him some time to get him to work. Put him in his grouping of veterans, and there's nothing came of it. It also didn't help that the ECW brand only had one championship. There was no tag team titles on ECW in the ECW brand, and they didn't even bring back the ECW World Television Championship, which would have been a good title for Yoshi Tatsu to hold. Ultimately, his career on the main roster amounted to nothing. Number 35, Enzo Amore. Now, why is he here on this list? Even though he's won championship on the main roster, he should have been much, much bigger, and partially he failed due to his own hubris. You were not going to find at that time someone that was more over than Enzo Amore. Fine in the ring, but it was his ring presence, his persona, and his mic skills that really carried him a lot. And that brings me to number 34 as well, Colin Cassidy, aka Big Cass. Yeah, you can't teach that. He and Enzo together were so over. so over, and partnered with Carmella NXT, these guys were just great. And the fact that they never won tag team gold is astounding, because WWE could not figure out a way to capitalize on their popularity. Who could ever forget Enzo and Big Cass cutting their opening promo with no mic? That's how over they were. Number 33, Mojo Rawley. Yes, he was put into a tag team with Zack Ryder, but the Hype Bros just didn't have it. I don't even think they won tag team gold. Mojo kept going back and forth on the main roster, finding something to do, finding gimmicks, something that was going to help him get over. Remember the broken glass tattoo on the face gimmick? It did not work. It just didn't work. And even though he had a kind of a big spot at WrestleMania, there probably could have been more with him on the main roster, and they ultimately, and once again, failed him. Number 32, Trent Veretta. Yeah, y'all forget, Trenty was in NXT for a hot minute, and then when he got caught up to the main roster, nothing really transpired with him. I remember him being in the tag team, I think, with Aaron Stevens, and at one point was being managed by Michelle McCool. It didn't make sense, but that's what they went with. And it sucks because we see Trent now, who is honestly just a star in my opinion. He can do comedy, he can do serious work. He's a great tag team wrestler, he's a great singles wrestler, and you see what happens when someone is giving the time, the energy, and the effort put behind them, and that's ultimately what never happened with Trent in the WWE. Number 31, Tai Dillinger. The Perfect 10 was incredibly over in NXT, and yes, his gimmick was a little bit simple, but you don't really need to do much when you're the Perfect 10. He was over, and when he got called up to the main roster, of course he debuted in the Royal Rumble at number 10, and then ultimately, again, nothing happened with him, and he left, and then he became the chairman and feuded with Cody Rhodes in the opening, early days of AEW. So there was something behind him. He was always a featured player in AEW, so it made sense for someone to give him another shot, whether it be TNA, whether that be the WWE. And now he's back in the WWE, but this time it's going by his name, Sean Spears, which he had made after leaving the WWE, and we'll see where he ends up now that he's back in the place that honestly where he was the most over in his entire career. Maybe this time around something will happen with him. But that's the first part of our 4-part list. Come back this Thursday for part 2, and the next Tuesday and next Thursday for parts 3 and 4. Peace.